President Trump and former Vice President Biden are heading back out on the campaign trail today after last night's spirited debate in Nashville. They clashed a little more politely over a range of topics from healthcare to stimulus to dealing with racism.
I am the least racist person. I can't even see the audience because it's so dark, but I don't care who's in the audience. I'm the least racist person in this room.
Okay. Vice President Biden, let me ask you very quickly, and then I have a follow-up question for you.
Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history. He pours fuel on every single racist fire, every single one.
Jason Grumet is president of the Bipartisan Policy Center, and he joins us now. Jason, not a very bipartisan moment there. What are some of your takeaways?
Well, so look, a few things, and good to be with you guys again. We're so desperate for some version of normalcy that we're basically describing the second ugliest debate in American history as if it was some moment of kind of statesmanship, right? So this was better, mostly because, Kristen Welker muted the two candidates when the others were talking, kind of a sad reality. But I think, both President Trump and former Vice President Biden kind of brought a couple of key themes forward. President Trump was really focused on trying to, again, kind of paint himself as the outsider, which is tricky for a sitting president. But, talking about Biden having been there for 8 years, never getting anything done, the tremendous number of arguments that Biden was corrupt or had kind of committed criminal acts. And then President Trump also, kind of leaned in on the traditional, Biden's a socialist, he'll destroy the economy. Biden conversely had his own two themes. It was healthcare, combination of the kind of condemnation of the COVID reaction, and then also the Affordable Care Act, which I note he started calling Biden Care, which I think is a very interesting moment for the kind of ascension of his own narrative. And then, what the vice president, I think, did the best was to really say, look, I'm going to be everybody's president. Country's got to come back together. I think his strongest moment was probably his last 60 seconds, where he really leaned into this idea. When you compare his kind of closing argument to President Trump's, it really kind of, I think, explained where the country is.
One moment that stood out to me was when the two went at it on stimulus, and Trump was very quick to call out Nancy Pelosi, blaming no new stimulus deal on her. Meanwhile, you've got Trump wanting to push this $2 trillion plan, but even people within his own party say it's too big and they don't want to vote for it. How do you think voters are going to view no stimulus plan? What do you think the message was last night for them?
So, I think the message reinforces kind of the, unfortunately, kind of accurate caricature that Congress is just out of touch and not able to really engage the interests of the American people. I think Vice President Biden kind of honed in on that. And, generally dysfunction counts against the sitting president. I thought there was also, though, a very interesting moment where, in addition to trying to blame Speaker Pelosi, which is a tricky case to make, the president said very clearly, if there's a deal, Republicans will vote for it. He made no bones about the fact that he was going to just roll Mitch McConnell. And that would be a very, very interesting moment because I think, Senator McConnell has also been quite clear that he does not intend to move that big bill forwards. So we would see kind of who's running the Republican Party in these last moments of the president's first term. I guess the last thing I would say is if McConnell says, that means McConnell probably doesn't think the president's going to get a second term.
Jason, how important was it towards the end that Joe Biden's comments on the oil industry?
So, this was probably kind of the most substantively consequential part of the debate. And it wasn't just kind of the oil industry, but it was kind of energy and climate policy. I will just note that they didn't debate climate science. So that's exceptional. We're now fighting about the solutions, which is a step forward. The vice president really tried to make the case for this transition. He used different dates at different times, but this kind of transition towards clean energy. And again, knowing something about energy policy, it's like I can kind of see I can remember the briefing he must have gotten and what he was trying to kind of put together. But he was trying to make the case that we would be moving away from oil and gas production. His plan says, over the next 30 years towards clean energy. The president clearly seized on that moment and thought it kind of reinforced the message of a kind of anti-economy, anti-business vice president. The only thing I'll note, which I just found fascinating, President Trump described wind power accurately as being intermittent. Where'd that come from? Like, if you kind of look at the rest of the debate, it was just this kind of hot mess of accusation. But somewhere, the intermittency of wind power, which he's absolutely correct about, kind of stuck. I think that you're actually, for the people really paying attention, the fact that Vice President Biden is saying, I do not plan to end fracking, I think actually that is providing more comfort to the energy industry than probably anything that was said last night.
Jason, before we let you go, anything you heard on healthcare last night that gives voters any kind of clarity? Did we hear more about an actual plan from President Trump? We know he wants to repeal Obamacare. That's before the Supreme Court now. But what's he going to replace it with? Did you hear anything last night?
So, look, you guys have been living in the same country I've been for the last almost 4 years. The president has never articulated an actual replacement strategy. I do think it's interesting that they're trying to take credit for running Obamacare better while trying to repeal it. Again, I kind of come back to the vice president being very strong in saying you're running against Joe Biden, really differentiating himself from Sanders and Warren and others over the question about whether he would support kind of the Medicare for all. And again, I mentioned this, but I'll just kind of say it again, like, it's the first time I've ever heard him invoke Biden care. That really felt to me like an effort to kind of turn the corner in his imagination of moving from vice president to president. And obviously, we will know sometime in November if that comes to pass.